By the 1970s, Ghana's educational system had become extraordinarily complex and required educationists with expertise in administration and planning to enable the sector play its full role in national development. Training of such specialists could only be provided abroad, and only a few people could be trained over a period of time. It was therefore necessary to set up an institute in Ghana which could train more of these specialists. Consequently, the government of Ghana sought and obtained assistance from UNESCO to establish a permanent training institution in Ghana for the training of educational planners, administrators, and other specialists. In August 1975, the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration, IEPA, was established at the University of Cape Coast on the basis of a joint agreement between the government of Ghana and UNESCO and UNDP as contained in the original project document. The overarching goal of IEPA is to provide innovative and quality education aimed at improving leadership, managerial and planning capabilities of personnel in the educational sector by raising their levels of competence and involvement in their areas of operations. The Institute also seeks to improve the operational efficiency of personnel within the Ghana Education Service. The IEPA thus became the premier institute in the country that could conduct research in educational issues to inform educational policy makers as well as train educational planners and administrators at all levels of education in Ghana. The Institute has had and continues to collaborate with international institutions to conduct research. It has also collaborated with the Centre for Commonwealth Education, University of Cambridge, UK, University of Bristol, UK, DFID, JICA, UNESCO, and the University of Twente in the Netherlands. For now, the IEPA runs MPhil programs in education administration, administration in higher education, and educational planning. This institute runs a sandwich professional master's program in educational administration and has an active PhD program. Over the years, IEPA has worked and continues to work closely with and for the Ministry of Education as well as the Ghana Education Service in developing the capacity of its staff. The IEPA is a lead equal opportunity institute for educational planning, administration, and leadership that invests in people by providing professional training, research, and consultancy for practitioners in the Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service, and other sectors. With highly qualified, motivated staff and learner-friendly facilities and services, they pursue excellence in educational research and dissemination to support evidence-based decision-making on educational issues. In this documentary, we get intrusive into the skins of past directors of the Institute to enable them share what they went through and how they held the fort of the Institute up to the current status of the IEPA. Mr. Jinyela got associated with the Institute in 1975. He trained with the UNDP in educational planning. After the training, he returned to the IEPA to teach educational planning and subsequently became the director in 1988. He left office as a director in 1991, having served for 3 years. Stephen Kofi Atakpa became a director of the Institute in 1986 to 1988. He went on secondment to the Ministry of Education and returned to the Institute to serve 4 more years from 1994 to 2000 as a director of the IEPA. He served as a director for 8 years in total. Dr. Albert Derry. Dr. Derry got associated with the Institute in October 2000 as the acting director. He acted for 2 years and was later appointed by the Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast as the substantive director of the IEPA in 2002. He left office in August 2008. He used to be with the Department of Art and Social Sciences before his association with the Institute. Professor George Kwekutoku Odro. Professor Odro became the director of the IEPA in 2008 and left in 2012. He was the director for 4 years. He had a people-focused leadership that sought to create the enabling environment for workers of the Institute to be a part of the administration. Professor Odro is now the Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast. Professor Yao Afari Ankuma. Professor Ankuma got associated with the Institute in 1986 when he enrolled at the Institute to pursue his master's degree. He became the director in 2012 and left office in 2015. He believed and still believes in presenting a united front in fighting for common goals and aspirations of everybody. He sought to strengthen the bond that existed between the staff and students during his tenure as a director of the IEPA. Dr. Mrs. Rosemary Sewa Bosu. Dr. Mrs. Bosu got associated with the IEPA in 1997 when she had her MPhil with the Institute. She became a lecturer at the Institute in 2005. Dr. Bosu got attracted to the Institute as a result of the courses that were being run at the Institute at the time. She became the director at the Institute in August 2015. Her tenure of office expires in August 2017.
But I respected them and related well with them. So they accepted me, they themselves nominated me to become, so they accepted me and we worked like a team at the time. I made sure I contacted my colleagues for their views, and I was in contact with the bodies that established the Institute.
As far as leadership is concerned, my philosophy is that if you are to be a good leader, you must show it by the example of what you do. So I'm a believer in leadership by example. So once the Institute has a mandate, some tasks to perform, my whole philosophy is that I must be oriented towards that task of training teachers, educational administrators, and educational planners for the Ghana Education Service. So my philosophy is a task-oriented person, and my efforts are directed towards the attainment of the goals and objectives of the Institute.
I was the first person brought from outside the Institute who had never worked there at all as director. And so initially things were not easy, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I needed to build bridges. In fact, now everybody laughs about that. When the appointment was first made, the incumbent director mobilized his colleagues to resist the appointment. So they actually wrote a very long letter to the Vice Chancellor protesting the appointment. But the VC ignored that letter, and I went. So in a situation like that, you needed to build bridges first before you could get anything done. And so when I went, I decided to adopt the situational style of leadership. So I planned every activity based on the issues on the ground. I lobbied, consulted, and before long, they realized that I wasn't just a stranger. I had also come to promote the cause of IEPA. So I delegated, appointed some of them as coordinators of certain programs that were there. And I tried to make everybody feel part of what was happening in there. And for 8 years, this was what went on there.
Well, as a leader, and my area of specialty is in leadership, and I really had a philosophy that focused on people. I believe that organizational attainment is facilitated when leaders focus on people. So my philosophy was a people-focused leadership. And by that, I sought to create an enabling environment for every member of the institute, whichever level, whether academic, non-academic, whether senior member or junior member, felt belonging to the institute. And so my philosophy of people, basically a people-focused leadership. That is why I cited. Generally, I think people embraced the philosophy. But of course, others too attempted taking advantage of that. There were some people who felt once it's people-focused, then performance should be compromised. But I had a different perspective. It's people-focused, but it simply means we must complement each other in pursuing organizational goals and goals of the institute. And I use the local balance that this Ndobwa system, where we have people coming together for the purpose of achieving one goal. And I strongly believe that no one person can embrace the demands of leadership.
For me, because I had been relating with them earlier on, it was very easy for me to relate with them. It was a matter of continuing what I was doing with them earlier. But this time, as the director, and then also bringing on board the entire institute behind me in that kind of relationship.
You can't really tell because people wouldn't react in front of you. It's when it's behind your back that they would. But so far, so good. Maybe in the beginning there were some challenges as to some staff maybe wanting a lot of things to be done at once, but you know, change comes gradually, so it takes time. But as we go along, we jump the hurdles as we go.
This institute was established. And the idea was that after 2.5 years, UNESCO will pull out and give the institute to the Ghana government. So before I came in, UNESCO was not directly involved, but a representative was on the board, a governing board of the institute. So what happened was that I was trying to keep the relationship of this office with that with UNESCO by my visiting UNESCO office and, you know, discussing issues about the institute with UNESCO. And that ended up, my relationship with the UNESCO office culminated in my becoming a member of Ghana National Commission for UNESCO, chaired by the Minister of Education, a position none of the directors has ever held, or that commission, no director has ever been put there up till now. So I was the only thing. So in that respect, UNESCO, we have been moving with UNESCO. In addition to, it may interest you that during my tenure of office, the Director General of UNESCO and the Deputy Director General of UNESCO from Paris, UNESCO headquarters Paris, came to the country. And the Deputy Director General was directed to me here at Cape Coast. He visited me in my office, and we had discussions about our work. In addition, he asked me to lead him to Wesley Girls Secondary School, one of the few secondary schools that UNESCO was planning to supply science equipment to. So I took him there to inspect their lab, laboratory, to know the kind of this they were having. The institute was established to serve the GES. That was the idea to start with. So to train the personnel in GES in the field and in the offices to be effective. So whatever we were doing, we must be in contact with the GES. And in addition, I would say that at that time, although there was previously stronger relationship with GES, at my time, the attention shifted to the Ministry of Education more than GES, in the sense that that was the time the 1987 reforms, educational reforms took place. The JSS concept was introduced. So then the ministry decided to handle that itself. Although the ministry's function is to make policies, GES is to implement. But the ministry decided that they will implement that GSS concept to make sure that they succeed in the project. The Ministry of Education was implementing the GSS concept herself. And we were used. IEPA was mainly used in the sense that we developed training manuals for the GSS heads, because that was that position was created during the reform time, 87 reform time. So the new heads that were appointed had to be trained throughout the whole country. So we prepared training manuals to train them, and we also participated in the training and monitored or supervised the training. To prepare manual to train national service personnel who will be serving the education service for the reforms. So we prepared them. I'm one of the two people who even prepared that one, and it was used for training them. I belong to the 5-member national panel that selected district directors. District director position was newly created because of the educational reforms. Formerly, the district offices were manned by district education assistant directors of education. But with the incoming of the reforms, the position has been raised to district directors of education. And they were to be in charge of second cycle institutions too, which they were not, the district office was not doing previously.
The original agreement which established the institute was a tripartite arrangement. UNESCO, Ghana government as the Ministry of Education, and University of Cape Coast. So UNESCO, the initial material we needed for input, equipment for our work and so on, UNESCO supplied vehicles, computers, and so on. UNESCO supplied materials, stationery, and UNESCO through IIEP, they were giving us their training materials in educational administration and educational material to start with. And the first, when IEP was established, UNESCO has a representative who was an administrator for so. And we continue, that's the relationship between the institute and UNESCO. So UNESCO was represented on our board. The relationship, the Ghana Education Service was represented heavily on the governing board of the institute. And we were training staff, administrative, planning people for the Ghana Education Service. So they were all the heads of institutions, schools, and then the directors of education at the district level, regional level, even at the national headquarters, and so on. They were giving us, telling us their needs, how they need the training needs and so on. We were training the staff for them, for the GES. So that was the relationship. They were serving on the governing council of the university, and they were giving us programs to run for them, for training their people and so on. That was the relationship.
Two achievements: building capacity and re-establishing our link, IEPA link with UNESCO. The Ministry of Education, that was a dodgy issue. But when I came in, I went in to see the Director General to talk about things that we could do with them. So we met with the directors, and then we all came and said, they said, okay, there were things that were the same here. But at that time, things were really tough. The monies that were coming were basically staff emoluments. And because of some inward arrangement, sometimes in this country, people can be rather selfish. Now, some of the GES staff themselves who are retired were lobbying to do things for GES. And so it was quite difficult for GES to come to us and say that, oh, here is the job that we want you to do. Nevertheless, we kept pressing, and we managed to get back to GES when some of these projects came. And then we tried to get the GES people involved. And so between now and then, we tried to work with them again. And this link was strengthened when I left office.
Yeah, during my time, I must say that because the institute itself was formed by UNESCO, and UNESCO had a purpose. The purpose was that the institute should be more or less the capacity strengthening tool for the Ministry of Education and the Ghana Education Service. And so because it was attached to the university, there was a governing board which was independent, somehow independent of the university structure. So when I took over, there was a governing board chaired by the Vice Chancellor. Then the governing board below, we had the director of the institute. Then after the director, we have the administrative sector, where during our time we have an assistant registrar. Then it went down to the academics and then others. But there's one thing that I introduced during my time, because I noted that for the first 20 years, the institute was actively involved in servicing the Ministry of Education and the Ghana Education Service. And of course, if you look at the educational reforms that introduced the JHS, the IEPA was actively involved, and no policy related to education was taken without recourse to IEPA's input. But along the line, such activities, for some reason, were played down, to the extent that we had situations where programs that you come to the IEPA, you find the Ministry of Education or the Ghana Education Service carrying out those, they consider themselves into research teams, and so all those things were coming. So there was some sort of a gap there. And so what we had to do was to try to bridge that gap. That was after when we came in. So that was one of the things that we actually tried to do. So the governing board was the policy-making body of the institute, and it was chaired by the Vice Chancellor. And we had representatives from the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, the Ghana Education Service, the Ghana National Association of HAS, the Council for Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools. We had representatives from the, I've talked about the Ministry of Finance. We have representatives from GIMPA on the board. Then we had other representatives from the university itself, from other departments constituting the governing board. And the governing board was actually meeting frequently.
Of course, IEP has been relating with the Ministry of Education and UNESCO. And by UNESCO, we have the different components. We have the Ghana National Commission for UNESCO, which is based in the Ministry of Education. That is where our relationship is strongest, because that one is housed in the ministry. Anytime we deal with the ministry, it is very easy for us also to deal with the Ghana National Commission for UNESCO. But we also have the other components of UNESCO based in Ghana. That is the international component. That one too, we have that relationship with them. And so I related very well with the ministry, of education. I related with the GES also. I related very well with the Ghana National Commission for UNESCO. You know, there was a time when I led a program organized by the International Institute for Educational Planning, IIEP, which is based in Paris. They organized education sector planning program by distance, and I was the coordinator for it. The students were drawn from the ministry, from different areas, and also some from our institute here, and for that matter, the university. I coordinated it. We usually went to Accra for the program, and we did that for quite a long time. And so that made me a familiar figure in the ministry and then the Ghana National Commission for UNESCO, and of course the bigger ministry, the bigger UNESCO as well. And so it wasn't difficult for me to have that kind of relationship. And again, because IEPA had been having that relationship with them, mine was just a continuation, and also to deepen that kind of relationship. So it wasn't something that I created or founded, but it was something that was ongoing, and we just had to continue with it.
When I first became director, my first thing was to go to all these partners and have a meeting with them and talk about the things that we want to do and how we want to collaborate with them and want to continue to work with them. So there was a positive response from all of them. So UNICEF even had an interaction with our staff, came to have an interaction and to see what kind of research we can do together. So presently we are doing some research with UNICEF. UNESCO too, we are also doing work with UNESCO. UNESCO was the one that first established this institution. And they are looking at how we can upgrade ourselves to what they term Category 2 institution, where you'll be linked with the Institute for Educational Planning in Paris. That is their main institute, where we run programs for them. So we are presently working with them to get that done, because that was put aside for some time. So now I've got it running, and we are preparing documents, and we'll have them come from Paris to evaluate what we have and see the way forward in that light. So that is for UNESCO. With the ministry, we are still talking with them. We do some training for them in terms of capacity building for school leaders and for teachers on the field.
So we work like any other department in the university. We served on the, we were members of the Senate, now called Academic Board. Formerly it was Senate, now Academic Board. We were members. The Faculty of Education, we belong to Faculty of Education, and we served on the Faculty of Education Board. The university courses that were taught, diploma, undergraduate and postgraduate, we taught those courses, especially in our areas. Then we ourselves too, we designed and developed master's degree courses for ourselves, but they are university courses. So those programs are still going now. So in addition to teaching university courses too, we make use of university facilities. For example, we don't have lecture halls ourselves. So in those days, we were using, when students were on vacation, we were using lecture halls for our in-service training programs for the personnel from the GS, like the headmasters of secondary schools, directors from the regions and headquarters offices. And we use their halls of residence and the lecture hall, those are the things we were using. So we are using university facilities for running our programs. We enjoy some level of autonomy, because from the beginning, the institute was established to be semi-autonomous body, in the sense that our finances will come from the Ministry of Education and not from the university. So our budget was separate from that of the university. So we worked out, we collected our money from the ministry and spent, that. So we enjoyed that kind of autonomy from, and in running our services, for example, in service training programs, it was not the university that determined what kind of in-service training courses we should run. It was the board of governors that determined what course we should run in terms of in-service or outreach programs. So that was the relation with the university at the time. As for the fact that it appears we were elevated, we were a bit autonomous, and we were, although money was not coming as such, but comparatively, our financial position was better than that of the other departments. And we were going out for extra programs outside, and people envied members of IEPA, for those programs because the Bible there was some remuneration. Let's not write that out. The only thing you won't be able to do much about the talking, but you have to, your relations with them. And in some cases, you can use some of them, some members, lecturers, as resource persons on our programs. So that was what, so that they could enjoy whatever facilities or conditions are there. That,
well, the structure, in a way, gave opportunity to the institute to perform. I must confess, when the institute was established in 1975, some other elements in the university resisted the establishment of the IEPA in the university to be enjoying what you call semi-autonomous status within the university. That problem was there, but because of the structure with the governing board, with the vice chancellor as chairman of that one, and they gave us that support to endure all the hostility and so on. And then that structure also helped us to receive policy directive from Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service, and the university to give us this academic quality assurance and so on, so that we could do our job despite the resistance being shown by some other people. So I should say this structure helped us so much. The governing board was working, and so on. We did our work, and so I was to say that's the way the structure helped us to survive till today. The University of Cape Coast, the relationship was good. The vice chancellor and so on, they were helping us to do our work, and then making sure that they gave us that academic control so that we would do our work to satisfy the requirements of the Ministry of Education and Ghana Education Service. But there were some elements within the university, more especially in the Faculty of Education, who did not see why IEPA should have a separate budget line from the Ministry of Education and function as a semi-autonomous body within the university. There was so much resistance from some elements within the university, especially from the Faculty of Education. We were able to manage it using the structure of the institute.
So I realized that in order to sustain our relationship with the Ghana Education Service, with UNESCO, and to earn some respectability for the institute, I decided that capacity building was my priority. And so I started. Luck came our way, we got a number of projects. The first was a project that was termed NOFIC, through NOFIC program, we got a number of scholarships on which we put in some people who did PhD. Then when the man who is now Pro-Vice Chancellor came, I put him on the NOFIC project as coordinator. He did a fantastic job, and because of that experience, he himself was able to bring in 2 other projects from which we also got some slots for training. And so before I left office, the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration was the only institute where every 7 lecturer, I don't mean those who are retired, but all those who were still in regular employment had PhDs. It was only at that institute that you had this one here. And so we became the envy of other units under the then Faculty of Education. So I was satisfied that the capacity that I thought I was going to build, I had done it. So right now, there is nobody who is a substantive lecturer at that institute who has not got a terminal degree.
The challenges, we have internal challenges and then external challenges. Now, internally, there were a section of people management who didn't think that the IEPA should be given that autonomy as it has, because they felt that the IEPA belonged to the university. It should be treated as any other department, and therefore there were issues, particularly concerning the management of funds. Because there was a time that the IEP was virtually being a source of reference when the university had to pay salaries and all those things. So people felt that no, this thing, you should go through the processes. They didn't understand why other departments have to go through the bureaucratic processes in getting things, while the IEPA, because of the structure, could easily get them. So those concerns, and it was a bit of a challenge, because I remember the number of times that I had to defend certain decisions, particularly regarding the centralizing the financial management of the IEPA. That was internal. That was one of the things. Then the other one was among colleagues, some colleagues who felt that there was so much pressure in the department, and therefore normally, but those ones were able to manage.
We are housed in the College of Education, at that time the Faculty of Education in the University of Cape Coast. And because we are part of it, we relate very well. We do things together. We are part of the faculty, and for that matter, the college. And so we are involved in everything that connects us together. And so that, if I should start from there, from that time until now, the relationship has always been good. We have not had any obvious challenges as such. Of course, sometimes there are certain things that provoke some kind of desire to find out more, to know more about who you are and what you are doing.
This issue of autonomy, because recently the university has even changed its structure and done the collegiate system. We are now under the school. So we do have some autonomy. But as I was saying, we're working on this category 2 issue that I was talking with UNESCO. And with that, we necessarily have to have some autonomy to be able to work with Paris and UNESCO. So that will even help us have a clear-cut autonomy within the university, but will not be completely cut off from the university, but we'll be able to have some level of decision-making that we can do. The main thing is that it appeared that we had shifted away from our mandate a little. It was to work with the Ministry of Education, building capacity and doing outreach. So now, and research. So now we're thinking of how can we focus more on research. So that is where I'm spearheading. And then also in focusing more on research, we are within the university, and there are certain things that they would like us to do. So the university is thinking of having more programs, PhD programs. So we are also looking at how we can run some PhD programs so that we are in line with university policy, because in Ghana we are looking at how can we train our people here instead of having to always spend money to go abroad. What can we do here? So we are also looking in that direction.
Generally, there has been improvement compared to our times. But I can't say much because I'm on pension, I'm a retired person. So I can't say I know all about what they are doing now. But generally compared, there has been some improvement. In the sense that formerly, we were in a building, a bungalow building given to us there. But now they moved to a place, this was formerly the office of the Faculty of Arts building. When the university built a new faculty, gave a new faculty building to the Faculty of Arts, they moved in. At the new site, we took over this. So we have more space there and more offices than we had. And well, I will say also that the furnishing is better than it was, in the sense that the economic crisis at the time, go slow time. So yes, and no vehicle, now they've got our 2 or 3 vehicles. They've introduced doctorate degree program, which we didn't introduce at that time. So compared to my time, there has been improvement.
Arrangements that we left behind, those 2 others followed me, the 3rd one was followed me. They were all part of whatever we did there. So they have only just consolidated some of those arrangements. But I think they are very well positioned now, and internationally they are gaining recognition. Because one thing about that, once you carry out an international project successfully, then you are more likely to get another one. And so they haven't missed out on this yet. Understand right now there's one project, very important project that they have been doing, and I think that is the lesson. So I think they have not lost track. I think they are on course. And then if they continue this way, then the vision that we all had for the IEPA is likely to be realized.
What disturbs me most, what worries me, is that problem I'm talking about university making efforts to reduce the status of IEPA to that like any other department within the university. Let's take, for example, Institute of Education. It's there with his own governing board and so on. They've been functioning all this time, and they are not facing the same problem. Institute for Development Studies, IDS, they are not facing that problem. Why IEPA? And IEPA originally, Ministry of Education wanted IEPA to be the equivalent of GIMPA for education. GIMPA is for public service. GIMPA is for public service. IEPA should be for Ministry of Education. A GIMPA for Ministry of Education. That thing, we have not achieved it. It's my worry. That is the persistent thing. I don't think there's any other thing which worries me most. Any other thing is ordinary. But this one, the university will not allow the institute to develop into that state within the university. Is my worry. Why reduce it to ordinary university department? And the director himself now doesn't have control of the finances of within the university financial control system. The director haven't got that. It's still my worry. I don't have any other problem.
My view, the current status of IDA, I think that IEPA actually is going back to its mandate. The fact that IEPA is currently actively involved in the teacher development reformation process. IEPA is consulting for the TTEL, the DFID funded project called the TTEL, on matters relating to leadership and planning. And this is the core purpose for which IEP was set up. So I think that IEPA is on track. But in terms of responding quickly to demands, I think that is where I have an issue. And that issue is the bureaucratic processes through which IEPA now has to go. That's one issue that I think the university needs to rethink. The director of IEPA now is treated like any other head of department. But the demands of IEPA in terms of energy, in terms of risk and all that is higher than other departments. And so I think that these are the issues where I have issue. But in terms of its projection, I don't think IEPA is doing badly. For the fact that I was encouraged that IEPA has been able to establish collaboration with Urban University, where students of IEPA can now go outside for exposure outside. And that's an innovation that projects the university. So we are not doing badly, but there's more room for improvement.
I think that the leadership of IEPA in the past have been very faithful and committed to the aspirations of IEPA, and that has continued. That has continued until now. The current administration of IEPA is working very hard to continue with these great things that have been started, and the vision goes unabated. And so I think that IEPA will grow. In fact, the staff that I mentioned about, those research assistants, all of them are doing their PhDs. And the last one is working feverishly to get scholarship to go and start his. And so in the next few years, IEPA is going to have a bigger staff that will enable us to run the programs that we focus on. Again, I think that now that we have learned how to live with this subvention that is not coming, we are trying to find new ways of raising funds to support our projects and activities. So I think that we are on course and we will make it. In the next few years, I believe that IEPA will be transformed into what we have always cherished it to be.
Maybe the competitor we may have is the University of Education, Winneba, where they are also running some programs in educational leadership.
So how does yours stand out? I mean, in order of choices, that someone would pick the IEPA ahead of any other competing interest that might arise?
For now, in terms, it's because of we are accredited and we are the original educational planners and educational leaders, and so our programs have been accredited and they are being reaccredited. So I think in that stance we are okay. And presently we are doing a tracer study with our past students, looking at where they are working and talking to their employers as well, and looking at the output of our graduates. And the main reason we are doing this is to help us review our programs to see whether we are really preparing our students for the stakeholders or the employers that they will meet. And in that way, we will make our programs more attractive because it will be focus on our clients.
I recall in November 2011, when this Leadership for Learning program I'm talking about, a Deputy Minister of Education, I think it was Honorable Ayariga, came out with a TV announcement suggesting that a program which we had designed for the Ghana Education Service had been moved from University of Cape Coast to GIMPA. And as director of the institute, I thought, one, it was an interference in the university's semi-autonomy, because the university has structures. It has an academic board that approves programs to be run. And this program had been approved by the academic board of the University of Cape Coast. So for a politician to use a TV announcement to poach that program to another institution, I thought wasn't fair legally. I made contact with my bosses at the time, but it does appear that the general thinking was that, well, the minister has spoken, so we only have to find ways of collaborating with GIMPA. But I thought, no, that wasn't proper. And I was so passionate about this because the whole idea of the Leadership for Learning program emerged from my PhD thesis. And I spent so much time developing the program. And what services we rendered to the Ghana Education Service, we didn't charge a peswa because we thought it was a mandate that was being done. And we had developed a framework, a handbook for head teachers with a general framework for us to develop training manuals. So when the Deputy Minister came out to announce that, and my immediate bosses too also felt that, well, once the Minister has spoken, we only have to find out. I didn't take it lightly. So I took a unilateral decision and came out to react to that. And I think it was all over the country. But I thank God that eventually, through the singular resistance that I put up, and with the support of others, particularly University of Education, Winneba, His Excellency, the President, may he so rest in peace, President Atamils, instructed.
The 10 years' time, IEPA should develop to have its own building or faculty block like that. This was suggested at the time of the establishment of the institute by UNESCO and Ministry of Education. So they should revisit that document on establishment of IEPA, and the buildings. They should they should have flats for directors when they have for courses for in-service training. They should have lecture with modern equipment in the lecture halls, state-of-the-art library, more vehicles as well in terms of facilities.
My expectations of IEP in the next 10 years is that it should be able to put up its own building. When I was there, I started, we came out with a plan, but I think for some reasons it hasn't been translated. And I hope that in the next 10 years, IEP should be able to put up its own building and move to its own office. Secondly, next 10 years, I'm seeing IEPA being created as a center of excellence in leadership and planning in the sub-region. This is something that UNESCO Commission is so much committed to, and I'm hoping that within the next 10 years we should see IEPA as a center of excellence so far as the sub-region is concerned. Then I also see IEPA in the next 10 years as being grounded in research, where its research fellows will be engaged in leadership-related research, planning-related research across the country and perhaps beyond the country. This is what I see IEPA.
Oh yes, in the next 10 years, I would want to see the IEPA as an autonomous institute that will attract international scholars, In fact, I would want it to be like the colleges that they have got there. It should grow into a college. It should grow into a college and run by a provost. So right now, in fact, I'm not quite happy about what has happened now. You see, the institute has been reduced to a department, which is not correct. It's reduced to a department. So I would want the institute in the future to grow into a full-fledged college that is run by a provost.
First of all, IEPA, we were founded by the Ministry of Education and the UNESCO. UNESCO has a component called Category 2. This Category 2 is a certain status where you are able to run programs like the International Institute of Vocational Planning. We started that project, that process during my time to get to that status. It is still ongoing, and I believe that that is where we have to get to. And the current administration, the director is working feverishly to get it on board. Once we are able to get there, then we will be as international as the International Institute of Educational Planning, which is in Paris. And so we'll be running programs not only for the Ghana population, but also throughout the whole world. We can have students from anywhere, just as you have students from anywhere that attend the program. So we will get to that level. And I believe that having started the process, we will get there.
10 years, maybe we will be in the Category 2 for the IIEP Paris, where we also may have our own building, if we get the cash for that. Yes, and then we'll be running programs not only for Ghana, but in the sub-Saharan region. That is why I see us in 10 years for educational administrators. And it's key because without the administrators, the school would not run. Things will not function well in the school. And we also need the planners, because in the ministries, they need the planners to plan for our education. We don't do things in an ad hoc manner. And we have to plan where we want to go as a nation in terms of education. And I think I would like IEPA to be spearheading that and giving contributions to policy, putting input out of our research. We come out with findings, and then that will give input or inform policy in relation to education, so that we don't react to issues, but we are proactive. Do the research, see that this is what the issue is, and then we come out with things that can improve our policy.
Our focus is education administration. We train students, educators in educational planning, administration and higher education, and also, as I said, in education administration. We are introducing additional programs in quality assurance, in monitoring and evaluation, and also in educational leadership, or at the MPhil PhD level. I said earlier that we are a family and we have a very positive relationship with our students. In fact, the relationship between our students and students and faculty is so good that at some point you wouldn't even see who is the lecturer and who is the student. And that is a niche that we are carrying for ourselves as a graduate school, as a friendly graduate school with very good relationship with our students. Moving forward, we want to enhance our research agenda and also our outreach programs. We are introducing many short courses, innovative short courses to bring educators, teachers, headmasters, principals of colleges of education to understand contemporary issues in education, and especially our emphasis is on innovation. We'll continue to challenge the status quo and bring new things look at emerging trends globally within the African continent and also within the Ghanaian educational system. We'll continue to conduct research to inform policy and practice. So moving forward, I'm looking for a very innovative IEPA in its teaching and learning activities, in its outreach programs, and also in its research agenda. I want to see the IEPA in 10 years as a giant in educational leadership within the African continent, where we can compete strongly with strong countries on the continent and win big projects, win big international projects and grants, all in an attempt to enhance the educational system in Ghana. IEPA within the next 10 years will be a household name, where whenever it's mentioned, people will say, yes, this is the institution, the institute that has developed Ghana's educational system. We hope to have a very strong relationship with government, with the Ministry of Education, the Ghana Education Service, with various universities, and promote quality education in Ghana.
We've been in existence for over 40 years. And as part of quality practice, we want to bring back our students. I think we have got a very, very intimate relation with our students. They keep on dropping by, and over the years a lot of them have gained prominence in education management within the country, and through them, through our students out there, our former students out there on the field, we have been engaged in shaping the management of educational institutions in the country. So they do come back, we do keep in touch with them all the time. We want to be a university on our own. We want to be a university. The former VC, I think, took a team from IEP to India to study their version of it. And that is ultimately where we want to go, because IEP was actually set up to be the educational arm of administration, just like you have GIMPA. So by now we should have been autonomous, but as it is, because of the exigencies of time, we have not been able to do that. So that's where we hope that we'll go, that we will be a college on our own within the university.
It's a very nice program, especially for the heads of institutions and the district directors. They should know more about the educational administration, so that effectively they can monitor the district, the schools within their jurisdiction. They should continue organizing programs, and as the woman said, they want to make it as an university on its own. I think they have to continue to do that.
It has been a nice experience being in that department.